morning, and we have a very interesting panel which comprises of developers, which also has marketeers, which has the finance guy, and also a chartered accountant and a RERA practitioner. So I think it's going to be a healthy discussion which will encompass, from various perspectives, and it's going to be a multi-pronged discussion. Uh, what I would request is that whatever questions you'll have, we'll also take up live. So after the panel is over, we'll take up a couple of questions, and at that point, we'll encourage live interaction with the panelists as well. Real estate after the onset of the pandemic has been extremely interesting times. There was an era where virtually there was blank, no one was able to visualize. It was just crystal ball gazing, series of webinars happened, government sprung into action, and suddenly you had a slur of incentives, stamp duty waiver, premium reductions, all thrown into the industry, which really helped revive not only the real estate sector, but also the economy overall. The success model of Maharashtra has been emulated by multiple states nowadays. I would move to the first question, which is around post-pandemic from your area of practice. What are the two, three trends or what are the two, three observations that you've had? So as a developer, Rushabh, what do you think are the trends you are seeing in this post-pandemic era?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Some of the trends I feel that have sort of changed post-pandemic, one is this whole concept of work from home, which was literally non-existent, I feel, before. Because of COVID, everyone was literally forced into it. A few years ago, I don't think anyone would have thought that work from home could be so effectively implemented. But because everyone as a whole was forced into it, it just became the de facto. Literally, if you see the whole country for a good 6 to 8 months was working from home. Everyone's lives changed completely. So in essence, if you think about it, something which was very difficult to imagine a few years ago has actually come to be a reality. In fact, to the extent that some companies have gone and said, okay, work from home can be permanent for all our employees. This is one of the big things, I think, a big change that has sort of come about to be, which has become a reality. How much it goes back to the normal routine is difficult to say, but this is one part of it which I feel has changed our lives forever.
Thanks. Very interesting insight. Work from home, work near home, phygital era, and finally even companies coming back to office. So I think we've seen a whole cycle over there. Ashokji, you run a listed company. What are the trends that you've observed? Residential sales have really picked up, but besides that, overall, from a developer perspective, what is the trend that you've witnessed in these last 24 months?
Well, the affordability of buying a home has changed and come down to the largest extent in the decade and the life of Mumbai. And what we witnessed was that though there was job cuts in the earlier days of COVID, though there were salary cuts, no increments, still the home buying decisions were taken more faster. People who were into adjustment of accommodation and living into joint families found it out that chota sa bhi ghar ho, but let's buy it out, we'll require it. And this is where we found out that affordable housing across all the MMR region got on the top charts, and today it lies after Hyderabad, the second line. And what supported was by the government, the housing home loan rate interest going to these levels where they could, where an individual can buy out a house very easily. So trending ahead, housing undoubtedly, when we talk about housing for all, I don't see that, though the agenda is 2022, but it completes in 2030, is it only that after 2030 there would be no requirement of housing? So the answer is no, because the migration is happening. So in two-tier cities or even in the middle income and upper middle income group, people are going for second homes, small homes. So there would be a factor where against the total population or the families living apart the below the poverty line, the housing requirement would be not one per family, but it would be 1.5.
So I'm going to move to Amit, around this. Finance has been the lifeblood of real estate industry. Finance was definitely one of the biggest issue, especially after the entire NBFC crisis, and more so real estate was deprived of funds which really were needed. What has been your sense around the funding trends which are emerging? What kind of projects are getting money? And as a lender, what is it really the trend that you are looking in future? Given that all these premium benefits are surely resulting in a lot of launches, but they're gonna need finance on an immediate base. So what's your take on that?
Thanks so much, Harshul. I think it's almost inundating to be in the presence of such august co-panelists. And I think we're in one of the most exciting times of our lives. I think since 2008 Lehman crisis, I think 2021, I think has been a game changer and will be a game changer for the next decade, I think, for real estate, both from a demand as well as supply perspective, including the flow of money. Harshul, let me share with you that India has been the highest recipient of FDI, even above China this quarter, topping $40 billion. Usually Indian real estate and Indian economy got less than 10% of the Asian allocation. For the first time, we're seeing a lot of money actually walk into India. So we're flooded with capital. There is so much liquidity splurging in the market that it is there for the asking, but of course in the hands of the right recipient. And I think that's very important. It's an underlined word. I think so, if you look at it, the growth of, let's say, just the realty stocks, and you've seen the way realty stocks have obviously doubled in the last 12 months, which obviously shows the amount of liquidity that has gone into going after real estate as an asset class. So from being a not such a good industry, it is now becoming the darling of the markets, purely from a capital perspective. So, I'm getting calls every week from foreign investors, from domestic institutions saying, what can we do? How can we invest? What are the opportunities for us? How can we write the first check in the country? People who are not even there in real estate, people who are not even considering, the likes of Bain Capital. I mean, Bain is a private equity player. They've got into real estate. I mean, so it's just amazing the kind of liquidity that is flowing from classical PE/VC funds globally, from family offices, from HNIs, from people who've actually made huge amount of profits on capital markets, people who are sitting on cash, and of course, maybe with the Fed tapering on the bond purchase, maybe there will be some withdrawal of liquidity because if yields go up, there may be some withdrawal, but it's not really a big concern for India. So today, I think that the liquidity supply is pretty high. Especially from private capital. So banks will still have their challenges. They're still going through NPA cleanups. They still have legacy issues to go after. Many of them are still coming out of their RBI monitoring cycles. But purely from a private capital, NBFCs are getting more money. They're starting up. Private equity is coming in a large way. We are finding a lot of capital in the funds. So one, supply is not a problem of money. Second, in terms of the recipient, of course, as I said, has to go to the right hand. So anybody with a demonstrated track record of handling institutional capital, of having the governance standards, of having deep organization structures, having the right products, having good brand equity. I mean, those are the key underlying themes for any investor. I mean, they're not going to punt with their money anymore, but they're certainly willing to put capital behind the right players. And I think money is available for everything. We ourselves are going after redevelopment, special situations, stressed assets, greenfield, brownfield development. So I think there's liquidity across the board. So I am very excited about the current state of things. You've seen the way money is coming to REITs. I mean, in the lockdown, we saw one of the largest billion-dollar REITs getting listed and absorbed, more than 5x of the subscription value. That trend is only likely to continue and accelerate. In fact, we were talking to one of the largest insurance companies yesterday and say, bring us more REITs, bring us more commercial assets. There's so much money available for REITs, for buying into commercial assets that, it's not funny. So despite the fact that there is a defensiveness about commercial asset class because of work from home or work from, or digital or whatever else you describe, I think there is no dearth of capital in actually going out and buying real estate assets, including commercial assets, and building them out as well, because people do believe that normalcy will resume. And of course, the footprint and the configuration may change a bit, but clearly there's a lot of money there as well. So, I mean, we've seen warehousing, we've seen every asset class you talk about. I don't think capital is a constraint, but yes, I think the capital is going to be availed by maybe 30% of the developers in the country. 70% will struggle. And those 70% have had legacy issues, have had start-stop issues, had credibility issues, do not have a sense of continuity of business. Maybe they're trying to finish a couple of projects and don't know what they're going to do in the future. The next generation is not coming in. So those 70% may not really be serious contenders. But I think for the top 30%, I don't think there's a concern.
Oh, that's great insights. Consolidation is clearly the sign of any industry looking to go organized. And that's really on a very positive note coming from a lender and especially looking at the finance situation. So I'm going to move next to Harish. Harish, sales has been the most critical arm of real estate, and more so in this pandemic where developers consciously chose to cut out debt, get into more of equity form of capital, which is in the form of sales. And you've been at the center of this action, interacting with consumers, interacting with your teams, working with so many developers. So what has been your insight, and how do you see the entire sales arm changing from a developer's perspective as well in the coming times?
Thank you, Harshul. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here, especially after the pandemic. I've now been doing this real estate sales and marketing for the last 7 years in different avatars. First of all, I must really congratulate the real estate developers as a body for their resilience. I've studied many industries over my 20-year career, and I haven't seen this kind of resilience where maybe the developer is out and yet he or she believes that they can come back into the game. And I think we are beginning to see results of that in the way the project launches are happening. However, if I were to step back before I go on to what consumers feel or what the distribution networks feel, one characteristic of this industry, because of this resilience, developers, despite facing all possible challenges, I think if we see from 2012 to 2021, there is nothing which has not happened in this industry from all possible shocks. One thing what I have observed is, when someone feels ill or when someone feels down, the first thing you go to a doctor. In this case, I see that yes, developers also go to various doctors, but all they say is give us the medicine. There is no conversation on what is ailing. And what I have seen, the various experts, the various doctors, they also are in a big rush to give the medicine. But medicine किस चीज का दे रहे? सर दर्द का दे रहे, पेट दर्द का दे रहे, या standard crocin दे रहे, irrespective of what is the problem. So, sales हो रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है. I think if we look at, today we have Bollywood guest also. Everyone in this industry wants to make a masala movie. We all know that Bollywood maybe there are only 1 or 2 or 4 masala movies which become successful, but there are so many success formula. So when I see a redevelopment developer with 1 lakh square feet to sell versus, let's say, a project which is 10 acres, everyone is just in a rush to sell rather than, looking at what their own criteria is, what their own requirement is, what is the equity position of the developer. Because customers will definitely come, like someone mentioned, there is roti, kapda or makan. But if the industry can look at, level 2, level 3, level 4, I think this industry will be in great shape over the years to come.
Very true. Over to you, Ramesh ji. How would you describe this era post-RERA? You've been a RERA practitioner. You've written a book on RERA from different stakeholders' perspective. You've interacted closely with all stakeholders, whether it's the residents of stalled housing projects or whether it is consumers who are ailing from delayed projects, waiting for orders, and also with developers who also have genuine issues which are beyond their control in terms of execution of projects. So what do you think has been the consumer confidence level in the industry after the onset of RERA? I think MahaRERA clearly took the lead. It's been about 3-4 years since RERA is into existence here. And we have the highest level of practice in RERA, even in terms of project registrations. So what do you think is the consumer sentiment here? Because more and more what we hear is that people want to buy ready possession. People do not want to buy under construction. People dread under construction. So what do you think is the reality around that, and how effective has been RERA in ensuring this confidence getting instilled?
Yeah. Thank you, Harshal. Let me tell you, post RERA, it has started building the confidence of the consumers. Now, the most, the drawback of the entire real estate sector was the transparency. Now, as the RERA has started coming in, as Gautam Chatterjee, the first RERA chairman, made it a point that let the developers get into the clutches of RERA, let them get enrolled. So therefore, we have seen more than 30,000 projects registered in Maharashtra as against 65,000 projects across India. That means more than 40%, 45% projects of India are registered with MahaRERA. That also shows the willingness of the promoters to come and get enrolled and give the delivery. That is more of a governance. They are also welcoming this move. So having said this, yes, these are the initial years. There are certain issues, and the issues are nothing to do with the RERA. It is all related to the legacy issues. Now, when I'm talking about legacy issues, yes, there are many projects which were not having the OC, where there were so many planning constraints, change of the planning authorities from in SIDCO area. We know Naina has taken over. Earlier there was, SIDCO, maybe town planning authorities. So when there are so many challenges which was going on for the last 10 to 15 years, that legacy the RERA is trying to absorb. Yes, the reports are there, more than 3,300 odd projects are lapsed. They have been called as blacklisted. Now the challenge was that, yes, being in the initial year, the compliances or how to do the things, they were not aware. Now I think market is picking up. Your take is right, that yes, people are moving, instead of going for an under construction, they are also thinking of getting into what is known as completed project. Now again, if you are going for a completed project, the cost is also going to be huge, and you will not get the facility for staggering payment. But now with the new chairman of RERA, Ajay Mehta, as far as Maharashtra is concerned, yes, he has been taking a lot of proactive steps, lot of compliances he is trying to bring in. Because first chairman tried to get the people enrolled, especially the developers. Now the second chairman is always looking at bringing a lot of compliances, lot of discipline. Now earlier with one plinth CC, you could get the project registered up to 40-story, 50-story, and you can start selling up to 50-story also, without having any commencement certificate, without having proper approval. What you had approval was only at the plinth construction. Now the new chairman says, yes, as you get the commencement certificate, those need to be disclosed to the consumers, and if the consumer is satisfied, even without the commencement certificate, he wants to book in the 50th floor, 60th floor, let them book. So the more and more informed decision he is trying to give. And secondly, yes, Maharashtra has been, as you rightly pointed out, has been in the pioneer, and we have appellate tribunal. Lot of decisions have been, decided by the appellate tribunal. Then the matters have gone to the High Court and as well as Supreme Court. You may be knowing that in India, Mamata Banerjee, of course West Bengal, which is an odd man, and she had refused to accept RERA. But the Supreme Court had nothing doing. There is the Act of Parliament, and whatever she had made her own law, it was set aside by the Supreme Court. And again, Supreme Court has passed n number of judgments, even to say that the RERAs across India need to establish the authorities, appellate tribunal within 3 months. These are the various landmark judgments which have been given by the Supreme Court. And of course, again, we had a very landmark judgment in Maharashtra, that is Bombay High Court, wherein around 40 developers had challenged the RERA. Constitutional validity of RERA was challenged. Believe me, within 15 days of hearing, the Honorable High Court, at the instance of the Supreme Court, could pass a judgment, or rather give a delivery judgment, which is called as a landmark judgment, where every sections of RERA was constitutionally upheld, and that is where, you know, the confidence level of the consumers have gone up. Today, the consumers need, the rather developer need to be very conscious, and he has to decide what is the date of delivery that I am going to give. And once you commit that particular date of delivery in the agreement, and then you cannot go back. That is the triggering point. The moment you don't deliver on that particular date with the occupation certificate, from that day onwards, you are liable to pay the interest at the rate of SBI plus 2%, marginal cost of lending rate of SBI plus 2%. That is not on the amount which you have not spent. On the amount, entire amount received from the consumer, you have to pay the interest. You imagine the situation. And of course, if you don't complete the project within the given time frame, maybe 3 years, 5 years, thereafter the RERA will take over the project, and then they will facilitate the consumers to get the project completed, or they may appoint a competent authority. That means you are going to lose the business which you have set up. So therefore, even the developers are taking it serious. Yes, now there will be, as you has rightly pointed out, Amit, I suppose he has rightly pointed out, now there is going to be serious players. The players who, I don't want to say, because people wanted to make money out of real estate business. Everybody was thinking that this is the business which anybody can do with a few lakhs or crores of rupees. And if you have a land parcel, yes, you will be able to get some promoter on the board and do the business. Now that era has gone. Now there is only a serious players who will come. And because of this regulatory system, the inflow of FDI or external commercial borrowing and institutional funding all have started. In fact, stress fund, where we are talking about 25,000 crores, which has been given only to the RERA registered project. And there are going to be a lot of incentives which is going to be coming to the RERA registered project. Recently, you must have known that now the developers, if it is a RERA registered project, then the developers, by sitting at their home or rather office, they will be able to do the registration of a agreement. They don't have to go to the sub-registrar's office, put it in a queue, then of course manage the system there. Now you manage the system in-house. That means you get the customers, give them a royal treatment, and get the agreement. The way live and license agreement can be registered now online anywhere. Same way, now agreement can be registered sitting at your home. And that is because it is a RERA registered. Now, unless until the project is registered, you are not getting fund. Whether any institution. I am also a promoter of a housing finance company for the last 25 years. We are having a Swagat Housing Finance Company, which is looking into affordable housing. Even almost 100 housing finance companies or all the banks, they have made it a clear understanding and policy decision. Unless until the project is RERA registered, absolutely there is neither to loan to an individual who is buying a house in that project, unregistered project, or even a project loan, whether it's a construction project loan or whatever it is not being given unless until it's RERA registered. So that means it's an era which is in the initial year of, maybe we have completed 4 years, but in next 10 years, you will see the power that SEBI has, the same it will come. We had an interaction about few days back with the latest chairman, Ajay Mehta. He said, Mr. Prabhu, we are here to make the system robust, and we want to, come at a level of SEBI. And that is the wording of Ajay Mehta. He said, we want to bring the RERA, Maharera, to the level of, SEBI. And therefore, you can understand. Now, I don't have to tell you how the SEBI as a regulator has taught lessons to various unscrupulous, capital people who are driving. So that is how he wants to teach a lesson to the promoters, unscrupulous promoters. So therefore, I am sure in days to come, customers' confidence is going to go up, and only serious players will be there, and whatever legacy is there, that is the cleaning up, which has started with because of the IBC, Insolvency Bankruptcy Code. Yes, that has taken up a route. Then GST has taken some people out, and now RERA also has taken out some, unscrupulous people or who are not a serious player, who are just coming for making money. I think there is a very good future if you are able to survive. the developer for next 3 to 5 years, I think they will make good, I would say the growth and stability in their own area. Thank you.
I think very interesting point over there. So first RERA came, GST came, NCLT, IBC, NBFC crisis. So, we started with double whammy, triple whammy. Now we stopped counting all of those. But yeah, clearly speculators and traders are out of the market. It's only executors which are remaining. And the goalpost is pretty clear with RERA now that delivery date is fixed and by hook or crook that needs to be delivered. Although a little unfair on the developer from the perspective that the approving authorities are not under the ambit. So at times, flamingo issue comes up, a developer cannot do work, solid waste management issues come up, developers can't do work. So, all those issues, but it's a very welcoming act, 100%. And like any other act, I'm sure this will evolve to expand its ambit and take new things in its array. I think moving on to another interesting topic, which is impact of technology in real estate. I think real estate was one of the least impacted with technology for decades. We operated without any major thrust of technology in the sector. And come pandemic and the entire game has changed. So a lot of buzzwords started kicking into real estate. Digitalization of real estate became a thing. So from a developer perspective, what are one or two digital practices that you have successfully included and which you would strongly advise all the viewers and all the listeners to also include in their business, which would really help ease out the traditional way of working and increase productivity? So over to you, Rishabh, and then Ashokji for your inputs.
Sure. Thanks, Harshul. So, I mean, technology has changed the way all of us live, and it's moving at a pace that we have not seen before in history, I feel. So, the sooner we are able to adapt to it and the sooner we are able to accept the reality of it, it's probably the better for us. I would sort of broadly segment it into three different parts in my view in terms of technology. Not so much how much it's impacted us, but in terms of, there's these various different apps, like for example, for society management. Now, who would have thought 3 years ago that, all your society related issues are all managed online? There's apps like MyGate and Apna Complex, for example, where literally everything from billing to security to housekeeping, all that is all migrated online. In terms of sales, there's these big apps like PropShare and Square Yards, where literally all your, property sales are happening online, which a few years ago was unimaginable. I mean, who would have thought you would have had a virtual tour sitting in Bombay, you could invest in a property in Bangalore, where you could see the entire plethora of, from images to videos, everything, and then just book it online. And the third broader segment is, these technology-enhanced websites like PropShare and Strata, where you can invest, or you can be a part owner in a commercial rental yielding asset. So I mean, these are just the broad examples of how technology is completely transformed. Like you said, in real estate technology, it was the sort of least involving segment in terms of technology, real estate per se. But over the years, that's changed dramatically. And I think over a period of time, more and more innovation is going to happen. From a developer's point of view, I feel in terms of, with the regulations, with RERA, how we can sort of coincide that and put our best effort in terms of sales forward. Let's say a customer buys a flat from us, keeping him updated, be it WhatsApp or be it a small app or be it an outsourced app in terms of the progress, in terms of demand letters, in terms of payments, how you can make that entire buying experience for the customer as user-friendly using technology. I think it goes a long way in terms of customer service, in terms of your responsibility, because end of the day, someone is putting their hard-earned money into buying a home. And as a developer, if you can make that seamless for him, comfortable for him, then I think you've done your job as a developer. That's it from my end. I'll give it.
Where in this jet age, the technology is moving very fast and this has helped out real estate. Informations बहुत easily available है लोगों के लिए and they can map, compare rather than earlier days. So especially sales was the first thing which had adopted technology to this larger extent. And now services part of from the real estate sector maybe people would be moving out in this direction. If I say from the sector perspective, yet 90% of more technological adoption is yet balanced, other than the sales and information which is all around. So now it has become that it's the last door to get into after getting all the information from all the sources is the only relying on technology, and digitalization has happened out largely when mass scales are happening. You don't know the client. You want the client to get in a very jet speed to the product. The digital marketing, the digital medium has helped out a lot in explaining the product, in getting the informations, etc. We will see it out that in the coming days the sector would even get that engineering also to a larger extent in the tech form, where it would be easy to analyze and control of the projects. So it's a jet age. It's a mass scale of marketing happening, reaching out to people whom you don't know. For the people also to reach out to many products which is available in the market, it will help out a lot.
So I have a slightly different question for you, Amit. We've seen the emergence of self-redevelopment in the real estate sector. And while there's been a lot of talk around it, there's a lot of euphoria, but the on-ground action doesn't seem to be happening, especially from finance perspective. And I've known personally that you've had one or two successful case studies around self-redevelopment. So what is this particular code that you've cracked, and what are your thoughts around self-redevelopment and its near future, especially given that Mumbai has exhausted virtually all the lands that are there. Only redevelopment is the only possibility. And the bigger developers of the world are not able to execute the smaller projects. And the developers executing the smaller projects are really not continuing in the same velocity. So self-redevelopment becomes possibly the only alternative. But however, it isn't working presently in the pace at which it was envisaged when it came as a concept. So what are your thoughts around self-redevelopment, Amit?
A very interesting question, Harshul, and I think you rightly hit the nail on the head when saying that Mumbai is a redevelopment city. 70% of the stock needs to come from redevelopment. We've seen a lot of push on 3310 SRA development, and I think that really set the tone for redevelopment. Then 337 and 339, which again got accelerated in cluster redevelopment and CES building redevelopment. I think so. If you look at the entire code set up by the government under the DCR, they've actually created huge incentives for these three type of developments, whether it's MHADA, whether it's SRA, or whether it's cluster or old building development. Unfortunately, there is no great incentive built for self-redevelopment otherwise. So obviously that is one limitation factor. While the code exists and there's promotion saying it's possible to do it, please go ahead and do it, we'll support you. But I think to that extent, it's only it's only a plaque on the wall. It's not so much so an implementation that you would need from the government that it can actually be accelerated, because clearly you don't get additional FSI in self-redevelopment. You'll get the same FSI as any other project. You don't get reduction in premiums. You don't get any other incentives. So really speaking, what others can get, a self-redevelopment project doesn't get. Which also really means that somebody who wants to do it has to actually find the means to do it themselves. Now, society members may not have the means to do it themselves, right? So whether it's paying for rent, paying for their own accommodation, paying for the corpus, paying for some of the other things. So I think those are inherent challenges as to how a society is going to go and self-redevelop, given its means, given its understanding, and on the lack of any incentives. So those are the constraints. And having said that, I think there's a huge opportunity too, and I think the opportunity really is because of this 50% premium reduction. I think one of the larger constraints in redevelopment was there was no margin left for developers. I think between 2010 and 2014, we saw a huge amount of people go out and start getting into self-redevelopment or development or society development, signing projects all over western suburbs. And when the premium started to come in, post 14, 15, which was marked to Ready Reckoner and everything became premium based after the new DCR, that became a very huge limitation for people to actually go out and start doing redevelopment because the premium cost was just too high. And just that fungible was not enough, free fungible for the existing occupiers. So I think it became economically unviable. I know in the areas, for example, you're doing in Matunga, you're doing in Santa Cruz, the actual cost of development was more than the revenue that they could earn from the free sale component. Because one, the prices had softened, okay, and the second is that the costs have gone up astronomically. And the expectations of the occupiers was also very high. Yeah, I want 40% more, I want 50% more, I'm staying in 400, I want 1,000 square feet. So I think there was a lot of misalignment of interest and commonality of commonality of objectives. I think that has changed dramatically first after pandemic because a lot of things changed. First is I think people started to realize that घर जो है वो भी मिल गया तो I'm very happy. Maybe a little more. Okay, so I'm not now trying to squeeze the developer, give me 2x or 2.5x or 3x of the area I own, give me so much rent, so much corpus. So I think there's a lot of rationality amongst the occupiers. I think that was the first point. The second, of course, is this whole rationalization of premium. And I hope it gets extended beyond December. Because if it doesn't, then again, there will be a spoke in the wheel on that side. So whoever actually crosses the finishing line by December of this year will still go under that. Those who don't will again still get caught with the higher premiums, and that again will become a challenge. So I think those constraints apart. So we are very happy because I think it creates a very cohesive environment between the stakeholders. So there is a DM or a PMC, which is like a developer with good amount of background. There's a society and their members who are not warring with each other. Now, for the first time, the tenants or the society members are actually joining hands with a PMC or a DM saying, let's make it together. Otherwise, there was a constant war, and that really disrupted things, over and over again, people going to court against each other and other issues. So I think that cohesiveness, I think, is one of the strongest bonds which excites us. The fact that they're willing to give up their homes, they're willing to give up their lands, mortgage it, allow the development to happen, accelerate it, be rational about the price, saying, "Theek hai, whatever the market price, sell it." Because we want to come back fast. We're not working for profits. We're working for actually entering into a new house, which today we're seeing videos of how dangerous and dilapidated Mumbai buildings have become. And I think that's something which has hit people post-COVID. We cannot stay in this environment anymore. We need a solid home for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren to work, play, and live out of, because now it's become the home which affords all these three things. It's not just residence, it's workplace, it's entertainment place, it's social place. So I think that has become a very important factor. So projects which have these elements, where the society is aligned, they've got a good PMC or a DM, where they're willing to come together, 100% of them, and offer it, willing to contribute some part of their savings towards their rent costs, etc. I think there is no dearth of opportunity there. And I think that's an opportunity we should not miss. And it's unfortunate that people are not able to see this fact. I think people are using classical models, and they're still stuck 10 years ago in issues that they've seen with redevelopment, issues they've seen erupting between stakeholders, this whole sort of, change of regulations. So I think they're still stuck with the legacy mindset. I think the future is this. If it can be further propagated by the government through these premium discounts, by rationalizing the cost of redevelopment, I think the opportunity is bigger than maybe an SRA opportunity, because people would like to actually go and develop these buildings, then go after large SRA buildings. That's more difficult. So we are very excited.
I think I completely agree with you. When this entire scheme of self-redevelopment was envisaged, there were certain benefits which were to come along with it. What happened was the concept stayed, but the benefits never came in, and which actually has made life a little complicated over there. But I'm sure, in the coming times, those benefits which were envisaged, at least those, even if they come in, that'll be a game changer. But it's good to know that, you are being positive about self-redevelopment and you're working actively in this space. Harish, this entire digitalization of sales We heard a lot of buzzwords like artificial intelligence, drones, virtual reality, tours, etc. But for ages, it was always thought that real estate was valued because it was the real estate. So you wanted to be there, you want to feel what are the elements around the site and not rely purely on the tech part of it. At the same time, emergence of brands has become a very critical element, and it took decades to build a brand. But now with this whole social media available at your disposal, you can virtually create a brand in 3 years, or you could destroy a brand which is 3 decades old in less than a year. So, that's the power with which we are running the technology. It's a double-edged sword. What's your experience from sales perspective in the entire value chain? Because you are into market intelligence, you are into marketing, sales, all of these functions. So how has it transformed, and what do you see as the future ahead for real estate sales from technology perspective?
I think it's a great question, because the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, all of us are going to see this happening in front of us. But before I answer this, let me just take back maybe 5, 10 years back, like how Mr. Prabhu mentioned about how SEBI has become a very strong regulator, and bulk of my career earlier was in financial services. Today if you want to buy a 10,000 rupees mutual fund, before you buy, there are 10 advisors who come to you with the brands, with the mutual funds, who are the right players. And moment you've bought, from the same evening, you start getting emails. There is an app where you can track your 10,000 rupee investment without asking for anything. Now let me come back to the home buying purchase. Here we are talking of people investing, not just investing their hard-earned money, but taking 4x leverage, which is the home loan. And we are in an industry where once that person has bought, he is left on his own to figure out chavi kab milega. So if I look at the real estate industry and technology, there is a lot of progress which has happened at the point of purchase or to search the customer, because I think that is what gets the money. But it's interesting, you also mentioned about brands. And brands get built when they deliver on their promises and not on promise. So I think we are in the first stage where technology is being used to convey the promise. So which is social media, which is to get the customers. So today, if you see, the homes have become tech-enabled. The sales lounge or the actual homes, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of virtual reality, but all this is in showing the promise. What I see so now for instance, today 60 to 80% of homes are sold through brokers or property agents. Now they have also come under RERA, but there we have seen very little of technology. Those brokers or those distributors are still not linked to the product owner, which is the developer, or to the customer. So some part will move there. And then the most important part, which is the actual brand building or the brand development, which is, because this is a product where the purchase or the payment is made over a 3-4 year period. So I see a lot of technologies have got built in terms of collecting of that money, but not in terms of actually servicing that customer. So what we are seeing is the phase 1 has got developed very nicely, which is where in chasing the customer, a lot of technologies have got built. I think this industry will evolve to, putting technology at the distribution end, and then the holy grail of all businesses, which is how do you own the customer, or how do you create the brand, which is, what kind of sales or after sales and in this case, after sales is not actually after the house is delivered, but from the point of purchase to the point of delivery. I would count after sales as that for this industry. So there I think we will see a lot of technology development over the years.
A very relevant point, and I think CRM in practice is clearly what needs to be seen in the industry in the coming times. Prabhu sir, from RERA perspective, it's clearly plagued with a lot of legacy issues. And when RERA came, we all thought it will be a panacea for all evils that exist, and that also led to a lot of disappointment with a lot of stakeholders. Clearly not due to the progressive issues, but due to the legacy issues which were there. In terms of stalled housing projects, government gave a solution in the form of a fund which was initially about 25,000 crores. And that was supposed to be a kickstarter to revive stalled projects across India. But when clearly 25,000 crores, being real estate a capital intensive industry, is needed to revive Lower Parel, Worli, Prabhadevi alone, leave alone Mumbai city and India. And we've not seen more such funds come into, when actually the model which is thought is very perfect, it's delivered, it's a success story. But I don't see a lot more such models coming in from the finance industry to revive the stalled projects, which will actually resurrect back the consumer confidence. Because somewhere down the line, every home buyer knows someone who's burnt their fingers, and that has a sort of a domino effect. As part of your endeavors and efforts with RERA, what do you think is the solution to these stalled housing projects, and how do we really come out of there so that at least we can move forward with things and not circle back to those legacy issues again and again?
Very good question. But let me tell you, is the only fund which was a challenge for the stalled project? The answer is no. There may be n number of reasons. It starts with the dispute between the developer and the landowner. There are issues where some unscrupulous developers have done 3 sales, 4 sales of the same flat. The funds are diversified. The projects are already mortgaged, not to one person, maybe 2 people. You have sold those, you have mortgaged, and again you have sold. So the issues are numerous. Now, yes, 25,000 crore was the initial, but there were other NBFCs which also have helped. It is not that there one of the requirement was the earlier lenders should give an NOC to get the fund, so that the first charge will remain with the new lender, which earlier lender will agree, which earlier would say that no, I don't mind losing my money, and let the new person who is coming in the last in will get the first output. It is not possible. Anyhow, having said all this, now let us come to what is the solution. Now a crisis will bring the peace, or any disruptions will bring the peace. That is the analogy which I think our chairman, RERA chairman, has used. What he did is 3,300 project, he just said it is a blacklisted. Without giving any opportunity to the builders, without calling, because as any prudent regulator, it was required for him to give at least a show cause notice, that let us understand what are your challenges, what is the issue. Instead of giving any notice or anything, he simply said that 3,300 projects have lapsed their projects, so they are all blacklisted. They cannot sell the project, they cannot continue the construction, nothing can be done. That means entirely blacklisted. Now the crisis has happened. Now, of course, he has come out with, recently on 24th September, he has come out with the new guideline, wherein he says, now he has analyzed, he has started analyzing what are the reasons. Now, based on the reasons, the promoters are first called in. He says, okay, if you have already got the occupation certificate, please come and tell us when you got the occupation certificate, give us this. And secondly, if you have any challenges like customers are not giving you any required consent to get the date extended, okay, come back to me. I will conduct the hearing and then I will do. So right now, each project has its own legacy issues. They are not uniform. They have got different reasons. And most importantly, the customers are scattered. They are not coming together. They are already paid more than 60%, 70% amount. Now they are not able to come. I will give you a few examples, because we have set up a committee under the chairman of Subhash Lal, who is an IAS officer and who is retired as a chief secretary of the CM, principal secretary of CM. Under his leadership, we have set up a committee where RERA officials, builders associations representatives are there. Now, the question is how it can be revived. It can be revived only when the customers come together, they understand what the issues are, and then it can be resolved. Now, I'll give you a few examples which will make our life or how the stall project can be revived. Mehul Choksi, all of us are aware. Mehul Choksi did a project of 155 flats at Borivali. In the year 2018, he collected more than 80%, 85% from the consumers. Hardly 55% job was done. And he ran away. And everybody is after him. The ED attached about 54 flats in that project. 2 to 3 crore BMC taxes, the project is stalled. Now, the consumers were not aware what to do. They came to us. I said, okay, how many of you are there? 5 to 7 people. I said, okay, let us form an association. They were elected to form an association. They were saying what we can do. Now government is after him. So I said, are you going to allow your crores of rupees investment going drain? Then they could, took about 6 months to convince them. Then we did the modalities. Believe me, 101 allottees who were scattered, we could bring them together under one platform. Then we approached RERA. Believe me, the RERA member before whom this petition was filed by an association to get the projects in their hand, he was also scared. He was saying, how can I pass an order where government of India, everybody is after him, ED is all this. How can I handle this type of project? But it was, interestingly, we could convince him. Then we could involve one contractor. See, ultimately somebody has to be there to bail out. We involved one contractor where we said 50 projects, 50 flats which are attached by ED is yours. You take over. We don't have, because each flat is costing at least, 2 to 3 crores. Let us say even 2 crores. 50 flats means 100 crores. What is the investment required? Hardly 30 to 35 crore. We said we will pump in the money. You be only a bailouter. You come, complete the project. Entire construction money, whatever is required, we allottees will put in. He was intervened in the party. And believe me, we filed a consent term. RERA was very happy. Mia Bibi Raji kya karega kaji? The respondent is not available. But you have got a contractor who will be able to complete the project. We are allowing you. Similar thing we did about one MADA project at Ghatkopar, where the allottees were not ready, but we could convince allottees. They said, what is the money that you have to spend? About 1.5 to 2 crores. Let us put in. Because you are 30 allottees, each one we are allowed to sell out hardly 10 to 15 lakh rupees extra. You already put about 1.5 crore. Why not spend another 10% extra? To convince them becomes tough. But if the allottees come together and RERA is there to help us, and we can find out various methodologies, and we have in the last 3 years, we have been witness to more than 10 projects of different challenges. Even SRA, which was stalled for more than 15 years, we could get involved one more contractor. We could go up to the appellate tribunal, file a consent term. We agreed out of 600 square foot, we said, okay, even if we are ready with 450 square foot in the new project, we are happy. So 150 square foot consumers gave up. And believe me, appellate tribunal was saying, Mr. Prabhu, have you mesmerized those allottees? And they were individually called by the appellate tribunal saying that, do you understand what type of consent term you have signed? You are giving up 150 square foot. Over and above, you are agreeing to pay 2,000 rupees more than what you have agreed to contribute earlier. They said, sir, आम्हाला कळतोय आम्ही काय साइन करतो, आम्हाला काय मिळत नव्हता. आज कमीत कमी प्रभू साहेबांनी आम्हाला असं समजून सांगितलं की तुम्ही या पुढे या करा. तर आम्ही सर्व एकत्र तयार आहेत. आणि what he did is he called all the allottees in the hearing when the consent terms was filed. And he took the identity of the people because he was surprised how an allottee could come to a compromise giving up his 150 square foot and he is ready to pay 2,000 more than what he had already contributed because the situation is such. So it is always all the stakeholders should understand where they are coming from. And if everybody understands and one wants to bail out, I said, you want to punish the developer? Let us punish him, but later, not at the time of getting the project. Even today, we have filed one more case. Now, what happens is, as he has rightly pointed out, the rival, because even in the allottees, they are not coming on the same platform. We are now finalizing one. I don't mind telling the name, but let me keep it secret. Around 300 flats. 50 flat owners have formed one association, and another 200 people have formed one housing society. These 50 people are saying it is the builder who is a culprit. Why those 200 people are agreeing to pay more? Because Mr. Prabhu is saying they have agreed to pay around 5 to 7 lakh rupees extra to get the project complete, which is 95% project completed. It's only 5% which requires about, let us say, 10 to 12 crores, which can be contributed by everybody about 5 to 7 lakh rupees. And you will be with the house. And each flat is at Mulund costing around 1.5 to 2 crores. But those 50 people are not understanding. And there are two associations. Now this rivalry has come to such a situation. These 200 people have contributed, they have started the work, but these two people have gone and challenged the society formation. This builder is saying, "Aap kar rahe ho na, aap karo." Builder is also understanding this reality. Yes, you do it. But the other 50 people are saying, "No, why these 200 people should compromise our right?" So they have gone and challenged the society registration, which is now stalled. They have filed an economic offense wing, EOW, cases against, not against the builder, but against those 200 people who are facilitating the completion of the project. So this is where, bringing those people just become difficult. And if you are able to bring all the stakeholders on the same platform, make them realize what is end product for them by selling something extra, that is the only solution. And this can happen case to case basis. There is no standard jacket, and it will never happen standard jacket. That's the only thing I can say. Yeah.
I think solution was clearly the buzzword for this conclave, which was themed around regaining real estate business momentum. We got solutions from developers' perspective with inputs from Rishabh and Ashok ji. We got solutions from sales, marketing, and intelligence perspective from Harish ji. And we got solutions from finance perspective from Amit ji. And lastly, there is hope for all those stalled housing projects. Conciliation, win-win approach, and moving forward is the rightful case study which Ramesh Prabhu sir highlighted. On this note, I would conclude the conclave. Given the paucity of time, we won't be able to take the live questions. But however, the panelists would be available in audience. So during the breaks going forward in the discussion, feel free to get hold of them. Thank you. You guys have been a wonderful audience, and it was a pleasure moderating this session. Thank you.